All right guys, 2010 Corolla with a 1.8 liter. This is an automatic transmission. We're gonna be changing out the passenger side axle today. First things first, we gotta take off the wheel. So they should be 21 millimeter nuts. Center cap on. All right, so we got to take this axle nut off. These are staked, so you can see here it's been punched in. Seeing as we're replacing the axle, I'm not going to unstake it, but for some reason, if you are going to be just putting the axle back in, then I would recommend unstaking it with a center punch first. Okay, so we're just gonna make sure that this axle is free in the splines, which it is. And then the next thing I'm gonna do is take off the ball joint. And there's 2 nuts and a bolt on the bottom. They're all 17 millimeter. I've got a flex socket I'm gonna put on my impact gun. All right, you don't need a flex to do that, but I just happen to have one, so I'm using it. So I'm gonna just try this and see if this is gonna work without taking the brakes off. We just did the other side and we took the caliper assembly with the bracket all off, hung it up, took the disc off. I'm gonna see if we can do that without taking the brakes off. So the next step is to turn the wheel. Now, you would think you wanna turn the wheel this way so that we could just move everything out of the road, but it's actually opposite. So you're gonna turn the wheel like this, and then what you're gonna do is push down on the control arm to get the ball joints separate. And then when you pull back on this assembly here, the axle's just gonna pop out and we can sneak this out. Now just keep in mind your anti-lock brake, your wheel speed sensor harness here and your brake line. You know, if you're pulling on this thing, you only got so much room before this gets tight and you don't want to rip the harness. So just be very careful of that. But we did manage to get this axle pretty much out. So next step is to lift this thing up. We're gonna get underneath there with a pry bar and pop this thing out of the transmission. Okay, so here's our new axle. It comes with a new nut. However, it's no longer a 12.30 millimeter nut. It's a 32 millimeter 6-point nut. So you're gonna need a different socket if you wanna use that. The service manual does say to replace this nut every time you take it off. So completely up to you if you're gonna put that one on or whatever. But you can see here we've got this little clip that's on the end of the axle, and there's a open spot on the clip. So once we get this other axle out and go to put this one in, we want to make sure that the open cutout section of the circlip is facing down. You can see if we have it facing up, you see how much that clip sticks out the bottom? The splines of the gear inside the transmission are going to catch that. It's going to make it very difficult to install. So important that we put the cutout facing down. Let me see. We want it this way. Yep, that'll work. Okay. So now we just want to see if we can just pull this thing right out. Like that, okay, and let's get this new one in there. All right, so we're gonna finagle this thing in here, and we just want to watch and be careful once we get close to the transmission when we're going in that we don't damage the seal. Might just hold this. Okay, now once we're lined up and we're ready to go in, I'm just going to use this dead blow hammer to hit the end of the axle to try to knock this thing in place. Just like that. And now we're ready to just reassemble. Now, once we go in like this, you see this cutout in the end of the axle? Try to position it in between two studs. I kind of got to get the wheel turned. Yeah. Okay. Now we need to try to push down on this control arm and get the ball joint to go back where it's supposed to go. You just line the studs up with the holes until that goes in like so. And what we can do now is we'll start our axle nut and we'll start our ball joint hardware. And we'll torque our ball joint hardware down first. We're going to torque this down to 66 foot-pounds. All three pieces here, 2 nuts and a bolt. All right, now we can torque our axle nut down. I'm going to use a big pry bar stuck between the studs to keep this from spinning. We're going to torque this nut down to 158 foot-pounds with a 32 millimeter socket. A little bit over, no big deal. Now that that's torqued down, we can just stake this axle nut. We'll just use a hammer and a punch. Just like that, and that just keeps the nut from possibly backing off if it were to ever come loose. And after that, we're pretty much ready to put the wheel back on and get that torqued down. Okay, at this point, we're pretty much just wheels on the ground, hand torque these. The spec is 76 foot-pounds. I do them to 100 and in a 5-star pattern. And then after about 100 kilometers, I usually do a retorque just to make sure that everything's good. But that's pretty much it as far as how to replace the passenger side CV axle on your Corolla. So thanks for watching. Give us a thumbs up, comment if you have any questions, subscribe for more content, and we'll see you in the next one.